Imagine a small-town girl who literally engineered her own rise to global superstardom. Behind all the Hollywood glitz and glamour lies a razor-sharp, strategic mind that absolutely nobody saw coming. She didn't just sit around waiting for the phone to ring, she tore up the rulebook and built a massive empire on her own terms. Welcome to Learning English with Rassa.
Now, Sydney Sweeney's story doesn't start under the bright, flashy lights of Los Angeles. Not at all. It actually kicks off way out in the quiet, rural town of Spokane, Washington. Raised in a really traditional family that valued hard work and the great outdoors, Sydney basically grew up with grease on her hands. I'm talking about a girl who, long before she ever set foot on a movie set, was learning how to dismantle a car engine and fix up vintage axles. She just loved figuring out how complex things worked, taking them completely apart and putting them back together again. It was a super grounded, normal childhood, but in the back of her mind, a totally different dream was starting to take shape.
And that spark, it hit her when she was just 12 years old. An independent movie happened to be filming in her hometown, and she just knew, absolutely knew she had to be a part of it. But here's the kicker. She didn't just ask her parents for permission like a typical kid. Nope. Showing a level of maturity that would literally define her whole career, she put together a highly detailed 5-year business plan. Yeah, at 12. She stood right in front of her mom and dad and pitched a serious, step-by-step strategy to pursue her acting dreams. She mapped out exactly how she'd manage her schoolwork, handle the finances, and build up a real resume. Her parents were so blown away by this presentation that they just had to say yes. The plan was officially in motion.
But, as you might guess, moving to Hollywood was anything but a fairy tale. Her family eventually packed up and relocated to Los Angeles to back her dream. But man, that city can be incredibly harsh. For years, Sydney faced constant, crushing rejection. She'd occasionally land these tiny, uncredited background parts, but honestly, it felt like she was barely moving the needle. And the financial strain on her family, it was immense. There were these really dark, uncertain moments where she seriously wondered if she'd just made a massive mistake. The entire industry seemed totally determined to underestimate her, looking right past her and seeing just another hopeful teenager in a sea of literally millions.
Sydney, though, she completely refused to let failure write her story. She realized pretty quickly that to actually survive in Hollywood, she had to understand the business side of the industry just as much as the creative side. So what does she do? In this brilliantly strategic move, she goes and enrolls at UCLA. And here's the best part. She didn't study theater. She studied entrepreneurship. Sydney wanted to know exactly how to read the fine print on her very own contracts. She figured out early on that knowledge is power. By mastering the legal and financial rules of the game, she could protect herself from being taken advantage of. She wasn't just chasing a quick 15 minutes of fame. She was learning how to play the long game.
So this whole phase of her life became this crazy juggling act. While she was slowly grinding away at her Hollywood career, going to audition after audition, Sydney was still showing up for college lectures. She was balancing this intense academic life, like we're talking math club and robotics competitions here, with her acting. And in her spare time, she actually went back to those Spokane roots. She bought a classic 1969 Ford Bronco and decided to restore it herself, posting the whole process online. She's out there changing the transmission, fixing the brakes, proving she was just as comfortable under the hood of a car as she was in front of a camera. All this relentless, behind-the-scenes work was quietly building an unstoppable momentum.
And guys, all of that relentless preparation finally paid off in a huge way. Her massive breakthrough hit when she booked the role of Cassie Howard on the huge show Euphoria. Her performance, absolutely incredible, complex, highly emotional, and just completely captivating. Right after that, she jumped into another massive hit, The White Lotus. Suddenly, you couldn't look anywhere without seeing her face. Sydney gained widespread acclaim from critics and fans all over the world. She proved without a doubt that she was a serious, heavy-hitting, dramatic talent. In just one single year, she snagged dual Emmy nominations for both shows, totally cementing her status as a genuine Hollywood star. The 12-year-old girl with the business plan had actually pulled it off.
Yet, as we often see, with massive success comes some really intense and frankly unfair scrutiny. As her fame totally exploded, Sydney was hit with severe stereotyping. Because of her physical appearance and the provocative nature of some of her roles, she became a huge target for harsh industry criticism. It got really ugly. An older, established Hollywood producer actually publicly attacked her, calling her movies unwatchable and asking, "She is not beautiful, she can't act, so why is she so hot?" I mean, it was just a blatant, disrespectful attempt to reduce her to an object. The media focused entirely on her body, heavily over-sexualizing her and trying to shove her into this tiny superficial box. The pressure was absolutely suffocating. It felt like the industry was trying to tear down everything she'd fought so hard to build.
But remember, Sydney Sweeney is a mastermind. So instead of shrinking back or letting them win, she took total control of the narrative. She stepped up and launched her very own production company, 50/50 Films. She started producing her own massive hit movies like the rom-com Anyone But You and the horror flick Immaculate. She's the one calling the shots, making the business decisions, hiring the directors, and securing the funding. And then she launches her own lingerie brand, SYRN. To announce it to the world, she pulled off this incredibly bold, highly disruptive marketing stunt where she draped the iconic Hollywood sign in her garments. It was such an audacious, brilliant move, and her entire collection sold out instantly. She wasn't just an actress playing a part anymore, she was a powerful executive running her own show.
Today, Sydney Sweeney stands as this undeniable, multi-talented force in entertainment. She completely shattered the old-school it girl mold, proving you can be traditionally glamorous and incredibly business-savvy all at once. Those critics who tried to judge her purely by her looks, they got completely outplayed by the girl who literally went to college to study entrepreneurship just so she could understand her own contracts. From getting her hands dirty fixing car engines in a rural garage to orchestrating multi-million-dollar Hollywood deals, she built a massive career completely on her own terms. She is, without a doubt, the ultimate modern Hollywood powerhouse.
All right, now that we've heard Sydney's incredible story, let's break down the language that actually built it. Our first word is pursue. Pursue. This is a verb. It means to follow or try to achieve something over a period of time. The etymology here is really fascinating. It comes directly from the Latin word prosequi, which literally translates to follow. Now, when we compare it to synonyms like follow or seek, pursue carries a much heavier sense of dedication and grit. You might follow a trail in the woods, but you pursue a lifelong dream. It requires serious, continuous effort.
Let's take a look at our examples. 1. She created a plan to pursue her acting dreams. 2. He will pursue a degree in business next year. 3. They constantly pursue new opportunities. Notice how in every single sentence, pursue shows a really high level of ambition and action. It is definitely not passive. Sydney didn't just casually want to be an actor. She took deliberate, calculated steps to pursue that goal. We use this word when we really want to emphasize the hard work and sweat involved in chasing down a major target.
Moving on, we have the word audition. Audition. Now, this one can actually be used as both a noun and a verb. It means a short performance to test the ability of an actor, musician, or dancer. The origin of this word is pretty cool. It stems from the Latin word audiere, which means to hear. So historically, an audition was quite simply a hearing, a chance for someone to actually be listened to. Synonyms include tryout or trial, but audition is the very specific, professional term we use in the performing arts.
Let's read through the example sentences. 1. Her first audition was for an independent movie. 2. He was nervous to audition for the main role. 3. The audition process can be very long. So in the first and third sentences, it's acting as a noun, describing the event itself. But in that second sentence, it functions as a verb, describing the actual action of performing. For actors like Sydney, the audition is everything. It's the primary method to get a job. It's literally the gatekeeper to the entire industry.
Let's look at another crucial term from her story. Underestimate. Underestimate. This is a verb, and it means to fail to guess or understand the real cost, size, or difficulty of something, or the true ability of someone. Let's break it down real quick. It combines the prefix under, meaning below or less than, with the word estimate, meaning to judge the value. So you are judging the value as much lower than it actually is. It's the exact opposite of recognizing someone's full potential. Synonyms include underrate or undervalue. Here are our examples. 1. People often underestimate her intelligence. 2. Never underestimate the power of hard work. 3. They underestimated how difficult the test would be. There's a really strong emotional nuance to being underestimated, isn't there? It often feels pretty insulting or unfair. But, as we saw in the story, Sydney used it as her absolute superpower. When the industry underestimated her, they completely missed the incredible business strategies she was brewing up behind the scenes.
This brings us to a really powerful verb, dismantle. Dismantle. It means to take a machine apart or to come apart into separate pieces, but it can also mean to systematically get rid of an entire system. The etymology here is beautifully poetic. It originates from the old French word démanteler, which literally meant to strip of a cloak.
as in taking someone's coat right off. Today, synonyms include deconstruct or take apart. It means you are carefully breaking something down to its very core components.
Let's look at the examples for this one. 1. She learned how to dismantle a car engine. 2. We need to dismantle these old, unfair rules. 3. He will dismantle the machine to fix it. This word is just highly versatile. In the first and third examples, it applies to physical objects, which perfectly describes Sydney's mechanical skills with cars. But in that second example, it applies to abstract concepts. Sydney didn't just dismantle engines, she used her success to dismantle Hollywood stereotypes, completely breaking down the traditional expectations of a young actress.
Now, to truly understand her massive rise to fame, we need to understand momentum. Momentum. This is a noun. It refers to the force that keeps an object moving or keeps an event developing long after it has started. It comes straight from the Latin word momentum, meaning movement or moving power. Imagine a really heavy snowball rolling down a steep hill. As it goes, it gets bigger and faster. It gains momentum. Synonyms for this are drive or energy. Unlike a quick, sudden burst of speed, momentum is all about building and sustaining that forward progress over time.
Let's read our sentences here. 1. Her career gained momentum after the TV show. 2. The team lost momentum in the second half. 3. Keep working hard to maintain your momentum. Notice the very specific verbs we naturally pair with it: gain, lose, and maintain. Momentum is obviously a crucial concept in physics, but as these sentences show, it applies perfectly to our lives and careers. Sydney's relentless preparation, year after year, slowly built an unstoppable momentum that finally led to her massive breakout.
We are halfway there. The next word is acclaim. Acclaim. Like audition, this can act as either a noun or a verb. It means public approval and praise. Let's look at its roots. It comes from the Latin acclamare, meaning to literally shout at or applaud. Synonyms include praise and recognition, but you need to know that acclaim is much, much stronger and far more formal than simple praise. If your best friend says they like your work, that's just praise. If thousands of critics and fans formally celebrate your work on a massive, global stage, now that is widespread acclaim. Here are the examples for acclaim. 1. The young actor received international acclaim. 2. Her performance was acclaimed by all the critics. 3. The movie won widespread acclaim. In the entertainment world, acclaim is really the ultimate critical success. It goes so far beyond mere popularity or just making money at the box office. When Sydney starred in Euphoria, she didn't just get famous. Her deep, incredibly complex performance brought her real critical acclaim, proving her artistic talent to the entire world.
Now let's examine a tougher word: criticism. Criticism. This is a noun. It is the act of giving your opinion or judgment about the good or bad qualities of something or someone. It actually traces all the way back to the Greek word kritikos, which means being able to make judgments. Synonyms include judgment and critique. But it is super important to distinguish something here. While a critique is often an objective, neutral analysis, criticism in everyday conversational English frequently carries a heavy, negative weight. It's often focused on pointing out flaws, faults, or failures.
Let's read the examples. 1. She faced harsh criticism from older producers. 2. Constructive criticism helps you improve. 3. He could not handle the public criticism. Our second example there highlights constructive criticism, which is positive, helpful feedback specifically meant to help you grow. However, the first and third examples deal with that harsh, negative judgment we talked about. Sydney had to navigate incredibly challenging public criticism that was unfairly focused way more on her physical appearance than her actual abilities as an actor. Following that, we have the adjective provocative. Provocative. It means causing an angry reaction, usually intentionally, or it can mean intended to cause sexual desire. The etymology comes from the Latin provocare, which literally means to call forth or challenge. Synonyms include challenging or stimulating. This word is incredibly powerful because it describes something that is designed specifically to grab your attention and force a strong, often very controversial, emotional response. You can't just ignore something that's provocative. Let's look at exactly how it's used. 1. She wore a provocative outfit to the party. 2. The director is known for his provocative films. 3. That was a very provocative question. As you can clearly see, this word can describe clothing, art, or even just ideas that openly challenge the status quo. Sydney's marketing stunt on the Hollywood sign was visually stimulating, for sure. But more importantly, it was a deeply provocative business strategy that boldly challenged Hollywood's old traditional rules.
Getting so close to the end now, let's discuss the word restore. Restore, a verb. It means to return something or someone to an earlier good condition or position. It comes from the Latin word restaurare, which simply means to rebuild or renew. Fun fact, think of the word restaurant. Historically, it was a place you went to literally restore your energy with food. Synonyms include fix, repair, or revive. It always implies that something was broken, aged, or lost, and you were taking the time to bring it back to life. Here are the examples for restore. 1. She loves to restore vintage cars on the weekend. 2. They want to restore the old house to its original beauty. 3. The medicine will restore his health. Notice that you can restore physical objects like a classic 1969 Bronco or an old rundown house. But you can also restore abstract things like a person's health, their self-confidence, or even peace in a messy relationship. For Sydney, taking the time to restore old cars was this wonderful grounding connection to her rural roots.
And our final vocabulary word today is disruptive. Disruptive, an adjective. Now, it usually means causing trouble and therefore stopping something from continuing as usual. However, in modern business, it has a second incredibly important meaning, fundamentally changing the traditional way an industry operates. It stems from the Latin disrumpere, meaning to literally break apart. Synonyms include troublesome or, in a corporate context, innovative. It is a word of sudden, massive, and rule-breaking change.
Let's read our final examples. 1. Her marketing stunt was a highly disruptive move. 2. Disruptive technology changed how we communicate. 3. The loud student was disruptive in class. So in that third sentence, disruptive is totally negative. It just means causing a problem. But in the first and second sentences, it is a highly positive business compliment. Sydney's approach to producing films and launching her brand was brilliantly disruptive to Hollywood norms. She was breaking all the old rules just to write her own.
All right, let's do a quick recap of the incredible vocabulary we just covered. First, we have pursue, which means following a goal over a long period of time. Remember, Sydney created a 5-year plan to actively pursue her childhood dreams. Next is audition, the intense process of testing for a performance role. She had to face years of grueling auditions before finally breaking through. And then there's underestimate, which means severely undervaluing someone's true ability. The entire industry consistently underestimated her strategic brilliance, which was a huge mistake on their part.
Next up, we learned dismantle, meaning to systematically take apart pieces or systems. Sydney proved she could dismantle a car engine just as easily as she dismantled toxic industry stereotypes. We also covered momentum, which is that forward-driving energy that builds over time. Her tireless day-in and day-out work ethic built the exact momentum she needed. And of course, this momentum finally brought her widespread acclaim, which is our word for formal public praise and critical global success.
Moving right along, we discussed criticism, the act of judging good or bad qualities. Sydney faced some incredibly harsh criticism from older producers who judged her purely on a superficial level. We directly linked this to the word provocative, meaning intentionally causing a very strong reaction. Instead of hiding, she used her unapologetic provocative image completely to her advantage, taking total control of her own narrative.
Finally, we looked at restore, which means returning something to a good, healthy condition. While she loved to quietly restore vintage cars in her free time to stay grounded, her professional life was the total opposite. It was highly disruptive, which means changing traditional operations. Her genius business moves completely shook up the traditional way Hollywood operates, proving she is a true force to be reckoned with.
This brings us to a really perfect idiom to summarize today's amazing story. More than meets the eye. This means there is a hidden complexity or depth to someone. They are way more interesting or capable than they might appear on the surface. The logic here is super simple. What your eye sees at first glance is only a tiny fraction of the whole truth. It absolutely perfectly describes Sydney Sweeney. On the surface, the media just saw a beautiful, glamorous actress. But beneath that, there was a brilliant, contract-reading, engine-fixing business genius. There is truly so much more to her than meets the eye.
So now it's your turn. Here's a quick little challenge for you. I want you to think of a friend, a family member, or maybe even another famous person you really admire. How are they more than meets the eye? What is that hidden depth or surprising secret talent they have that most people don't immediately see? Take a moment and practice using this idiom to describe them. And that leads me perfectly to my final question for you today. What hidden talents will you use to shape your own future?
We all have something incredibly powerful waiting just beneath the surface. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this. Join the conversation and share your answers with our amazing community on Telegram at Fluent Mind. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep practicing, keep pursuing your goals, and I will see you next time.